not coffee. Oh, shit.
I understand. I am at heart a hater.
You? A hater? No, not you.
Listen.
You are one of the kindest, gentlest, most loving people I've ever met in my life.
I am all of those things, but I'm also a huge bitch.
You're mostly a huge bitch.
Rude. I'm very nice to you.
Hey, I almost said that real gross. I have known the taste of your skin
Ew.
for 15 years as of yesterday.
Wait, how? No, that's disgusting. Why did you phrase it like that?
I don't know. Yesterday, as of recording, is 15 years of the day of our first kiss. Which is way less sweet when I phrase it. I know the taste of your skin.
Why are you phrasing it that way?
Because this is another brand new episode of Soon to Be... I can't go in that way. That can't be it.
Nope.
That cannot be it.
Nope.
But you know what can be it? A brand new episode of Soon to Be a Major Motion Podcast, the podcast where we watch movies that were written... Oh, fuck. Where we read books that were turned into movies and watch movies that are based on books. Unfortunately, I am still Billy Beck.
I am Cody Beck.
Cody.
Yeah.
How have you been?
I've been grand. We got health scares. We got... Work is still a shit show. But I'm alive. How about you?
My mom came to town.
Yes. That was actually a wonderful break.
For who?
For me. For me.
Because I had my 6-day work week that ramped up to the big warehouse sale. Mm-hmm. And then I drove home, did some chores, and drove to fucking LAX to pick up these two old ladies, my mom and her sister. Drove them all the way back up here, and then spend the next 3 full fucking days with these two ladies. Except for we had like 2 hours on Tuesday to like decompress a little bit. But it took me all of last weekend just to like sit on the couch and do fucking nothing and emotionally recover.
I mean, to be fair, that was also the time you discovered that your sister had cancer.
Yeah, that was like 3 days later is when that trip was.
Yeah. So you were also dealing with that emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, like every moment of levity was then followed with, ooh, I need to call your sister. And then it's like we're sitting in the car on the way back from a dinner and she's just talking on the phone with my sister in the back seat and I'm in hell.
Yeah. Yeah, it was basically a fight to keep her distracted from trying to use her phone.
Yeah. We didn't win very often because we didn't try very hard.
Yeah, because then she wasn't paying attention to us. We really do love her. It's a lot.
Just, speaking of feudal battles.
Our marriage?
This week's topic.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So, you read the title to this, and if you didn't because of algorithms, cool. Thanks, algorithm. We're talking about a short story from 1938 called Who Goes There?, which was turned into a film in 1951 by Howard Hawks called The Thing from Another World, which was then remade in 1982 by John Carpenter as The Thing, which was then prequeled in 2011 by Matthias van Heiningen, which was then which was then prequeled in 2011 by a very Danish name I'm not going to pronounce, and then re-released as a full novel in 2019 called Frozen Hell. Cody.
Yes.
How were you first made aware of The Thing?
1982?
Any of them. I don't care.
Well, it was up until this podcast just The Thing 1982 and The Thing 2011 that I was familiar with. So I believe it was in this apartment where I watched it with you and probably Kyle for the first time.
I don't think I ever watched it with Kyle.
I thought we did, because I think that's how we found out it was one of his favorite movies.
I don't recall. Regardless.
Yeah. But anyway, it was in this apartment, and I was a scaredy cat. I didn't really like watching spooky movies. I didn't like watching horror movies or anything like that. And you were like, let's throw this on. If it gets too, like, I'm here, we'll make fun of it if you get too scared. I fucking loved it. The effects are so good. That was what drew me in, is because I'm I'm a weirdo in that I'm kind of squeamish in terms of, like, horror. But, oh boy, I love body horror. I love writing it. I love reading it. I love watching it. So that, and also, I mean, Kurt Russell is a delight. So that was my introduction to The Thing, and then 1982. And then I remember vaguely seeing some stuff about the prequel in 2011, because it was like, ooh, is it a sequel? Is it a remake? Is it a whatever? And then it was like when Mary Elizabeth Winstead was like super hot, because I think that was right on the heels of Scott Pilgrim.
It sure was.
Then I feel like around the time 2011 came out, I was like, oh, there's a short story associated with it, but the name didn't stick in my brain. And it's also one of those things where it's like, when you see all of those anthologies that are like, read it before it becomes read what it was before it was a movie, it's like one of those that gets lumped in there.
Mm-hmm.
But I really wasn't familiar with anything. I'm not a science fiction girl, so it was kind of like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
And that was it up until we made the choice to read and watch this. What about you?
So a lot of the movies I watched for this, I have like weirdly clear, distinct memories of how I first learned it existed. Like, for example, last weekend, for whatever reason, I'm on the staircase of my childhood best friend's house growing up, because I was visiting for a weekend, because it was after I moved away, and his parents just came back, and they had seen Cold Mountain. And I remember asking them how it was. Like, that's like the weirdly distinct memory I have. I don't have one for The Thing. I don't remember when I first learned that The Thing was, you know, a movie that existed. I think I must have just seen it, like, referenced on IMDb in the forums back in the day, or in like maybe the AFI list, like top 10 scares or something like that.
I could see it also being on like a cult classics,
because it was becoming a cult classic in the early aughts when I was like starting to pay attention to movies.
Yeah.
And I don't remember seeing like anything about the DVD re-release in 98. I don't remember being on TV either. But there was like a notorious television cut.
Yeah.
It just was one of those things that I knew about all of a sudden, as I knew it was John Carpenter's The Thing. He's the guy who did Halloween. And I think I saw Halloween before I saw this. And there's a scene in Halloween where the Thing from outer space is on a screen, and it's like, oh, he went and did the thing. Like, I knew that before I ever saw the movie.
I remember you saying that little piece of trivia when I first watched Halloween with you.
Yeah. Like, now that I think about it, like, my introduction may have been that website that's, I can't remember what it's called, but it's famous movies reenacted in 30 seconds by animated rabbits.
Oh my god, yes.
I'm pretty sure they have one for The Thing, and I probably watched that a dozen times. That might have been it, actually.
What an introduction.
What a therapy for me right now. Unlocking old memories. Remembering the good times.
God. Don't talk about unlocking old memories. We'll get into that later.
Okay, so we'll get into something now. Normally, this is the part of the show where I make a joke about, I saw you reading this, and let's watch a trailer. And we're not going to do that right away, because I might have gone a little overboard this time.
Might you have.
I didn't just take notes. I wrote myself a script. So, we're going to start with The Man. We begin our tale where most horror stories begin. New Jersey. Born in 1910, John W. Campbell failed to graduate from his fancy boarding school. Then he started writing science fiction before he failed to graduate from MIT. After working his way up to editor of Astounding Science Fiction, he published his most enduring story, Who Goes There, in 1938. Campbell's legacy lives on beyond this story, what with his pro-slavery, racist opinions still present in the U.S. government, and his early work in Dianetics with L. Ron Hubbard, founder of the Church of Scientology.
So, I do want to add something here. He didn't work his way up to becoming editor. He was in the right place at the right time, and the position was quite literally handed to him.
Oh, but you know the pro-slavery guy is going to talk about how he pulled himself up by his bootstraps and worked hard from the mailroom up to...
Also, no, he didn't. He was a Nepo baby. He was supported by his father's money so much, his entire childhood and most of his adult life.
Anyway, enough about that racist. Let's talk about the story he wrote. Who Goes There? Who Goes There was first published in the August 1938 edition of Astounding Science Fiction, with a longer version published in the collection titled Who Goes There? It tells the story of a group of scientists at a base in Antarctica who discover an alien ship and a frozen life form. The men quickly discover that the alien can shapeshift and perfectly imitate any other life form, including their memories and personality. Also, it can read minds and project thoughts.
Dianetics.
Woohoo! The men begin to succumb to both paranoia and the Thing, until finally MacReady figures out a blood test to determine who is and isn't human. With only one man alive and left to test, Blair, they discover he was a Thing the whole time, was not successfully locked up as they thought, and was this close to completing a nuclear anti-gravity device in order to escape Antarctica.
Yep, pretty much.
So, you read Who Goes There?
I did indeed.
You read, I believe, the one from the collection, which is 14 chapters, as opposed to the 12-chapter original publishing.
Yes.
Is there anything you want to add about the story itself? Like, how was it written?
It's very interesting. You can tell that the person who wrote it has something of a scientific background because of the way that he deals with the actual scientist, or actual science. For example, each of the different people have specific things that they're doing. So, for example, you've got Connett, who is the first one that we watch as the reader get consumed, absorbed, whatever. And he is dealing specifically with something with cosmic rays. You've got Blair, who's the biologist. You've got MacReady, who's a meteorologist. Everyone has a specific scientific task that they are set there to do, which is the kind of specificity you only get from someone who understands the differences in disciplines.
I wonder if Weir read this, because that's very Ares' mission in The Martian.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. But it's also like one of the things that becomes a hallmark, or was a hallmark of Campbell's writing, because if I recall correctly, this was actually published under his pen name.
It was?
Initially.
Allegedly, because he was just named editor and didn't want to, you know... He hid the fact that he was publishing his own writing, as if...
Yeah, well, he had been using he had been using the pen name for a little bit prior to this because he was starting to experiment with a different type of writing. A lot of the writing that quote-unquote paid the bills was kind of like chock-a-block, pulp, science fiction. I know it's literally pulp because it's a pulp magazine, but it was like literally like, it was formulaic, he followed the same thing, it was the same characters, etc.
Yeah.
The Don A. Stewart, which was his pen name, was actually where he started exploring kind of pushing back on the questions that he assumed answered, and he saw other writers assuming answered in regular science fiction. And so the kind of darker, deeper, more philosophical stuff he put under Don Stewart. Mm. It just so happened that he had been when he got the position to be editor, he had been trying to sell this story, and so it ended up in the pile of slush. And then eventually he got it approved by Above, and it got published as Don A. Stewart.
Yeah.
The story.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a darker tone on top of the specificity of all of the science. The body horror scenes, while not as intense, obviously, as you would get in the 80s, they are pretty descriptive, which was another thing that Campbell was known for in his writing, was like really, really good visceral descriptions of things, because apparently he was known for not having much of a visual memory. So the way that he wrote kind of encapsulated, it was surprising to a lot of people, the way that he wrote, because of the fact that he famously couldn't picture faces. But overall, the summary that you gave is pretty much exactly how it happened.
Cool. Thank you, Wikipedia.
Yeah. I do want to say, like, I just want to read the first couple of sentences.
Oh, yeah. Like, how does it start?
So, this is the copy that I have was purchased by the library in 1978.
Fuck.
So, this is from the first story in the collection, which is Who Goes There. The place stank. A queer, mingled stench that only the ice-buried cabins of an Antarctic camp know, compounded of reeking human sweat and the heavy fish oil stench of melted seal blubber. An overtone of liniment combated the musty smell of sweat and snow-drenched furs. The acrid odor of burnt cooking fat and an animal not unpleasant smell of dogs, diluted by time, hung in the air. Lingering odors of machine oil contrasted sharply with the taint of harness dressing and leather. Yet, somehow, through all that reek of human beings and their associates, dogs, machines, and cooking, came another taint, It was a queer, neck-ruffling thing, a faintest suggestion of an odor alien among the smells of industry and life. And it was a life smell. But it came from the thing that lay bound with cord and tarpaulin on the table, dripping slowly, methodically onto the heavy planks, dank and gaunt under the unshielded glare of the electric light.
Oh, so he just goes right into fucking...
Yes.
Shit. Yeah, obviously. The movie's not told with flashback.
Yeah.
So the rights to Who Goes There were originally purchased by Howard Hawks, not the aviator, the other guy, in 1950, to be released as a film in 1951, allegedly directed by Christian Nyby. We're going to talk about him some more in November.
Oh, okay. There was a passing note that they weren't sure who to give the directing credit to in this movie.
So basically, because I don't have an actual section for this, basically the Howard Hawks' producing style was to be in the room. And it was Nyby's, I believe it was his first feature direction, his directorial debut. And he would regularly go over to Hawks and say some things where no one could hear. And then he would come back and direct the picture. And in interviews later in life, like, multiple actors had different opinions of who was actually directing the shoot. And it's just, like, fascinating that he worked in such a way, that Hawks worked in such a way that no one is sure how much manipulating he was doing. You know? Not manipulating, but how much, you know.
The other piece of work that I read for this was called Astounding, which is a biography on men of the golden age of science fiction. And this movie is talked about. Did you get the actual amount that the rights were purchased for? Did you see that anywhere?
If I did, I didn't take note of it.
$1,250.
Wow.
And yes, it is mentioned in here that Hawks actually took a significant portion of the direction fee.
I did see that. He only gave Nyby like maybe 5 or 10% of the directing fee, and kept the rest himself.
So everyone was like...
But Nyby got the credit.
Yeah.
I think it might have been for the guild, too. Like, he needed it for the guilds.
Did you see anything about reactions to the movie by the science fiction folks?
I did, and we'll talk about that later. But for now, this is allegedly directed by Christian Nyby, and written by Charles Lederer, who wrote His Girl Friday. Starring Margaret Sheridan, Kenneth Tobey, and Robert Cornthwaite, the film tells the story of a scientific outpost in the Arctic Circle who find a downed alien craft in the snow. With the help of local military personnel, they remove the alien creature from the ice and thaw it out, revealing it to be a blood-sucking, plant-based monster. While the evil scientist starts to grow more of them, the military guys capture and electrocute the thing to save the day. It is a very 50s guy in a suit B movie.
Okay.
Which, fitting, because that's what it was, you know. And for your earlier point, it wasn't well received by the science fiction community.
Asimov, who was a mentee of Campbell, said it was the worst movie ever made.
Oh my god.
And Campbell himself said that it was his only discussion of the movie was to say that it's difficult to bring the concept of Who Goes There to screen without giving everybody the heebie-jeebies, which is politely damning.
Yeah. But the challenge was accepted. Because after it's, I didn't see anything about budget, because I don't think anyone cared in the 50s about budget and returns. But critically, The Thing from Another World wasn't well received at the time, even by film critics, not just science fiction people. But over the next 20, 30 years, it became a cult classic. So interest in remaking The Thing from Another World began in the mid-70s. Rights to the remake bounced around before settling at Universal Studios, who wanted to adapt the original story more closely than Hawks did in 1951. So they approached a young man named John Carpenter in 1976. But because he hadn't done any major studio work at that time, he was completely independent. They instead opted for Tobe Hooper, who did Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Okay.
They got some pitches from Hooper and various writers, and other directors, including John Landis, but everything got turned down, and the project was shelved until 1979, when Alien came out. Now there's renewed interest in the story, and 1978's Halloween renewed Universal's interest in John Carpenter.
I have a semi-relevant quote.
Ooh, do you?
Yes. From John Carpenter. This is a really interesting quote, I think, from Carpenter specifically, because of what was so successful about Halloween and kind of The Thing. Bill Lancaster wrote the screenplay with the monster and shadows, the old Hollywood cliche stuff, which everybody still talks about even to this day. Rob Bottin was the guy who said, no, you've got to put him in the light. Then the audience really goes nuts. They really go nuts because it is there in front of them. I wasn't sure, but that's what we did.
I didn't pull that exact quote, but I'm thankful that you did. Because we're going to talk about Rob Bottin a little bit. We're going to talk about Bill Lancaster a little bit. But first, let's talk about John Carpenter.
Yeah.
Born in 1948, John Carpenter fell in love with film at an early age. Inspired by the works of John Ford and, wait for it, Howard Hawks, he started making his own horror and sci-fi films before high school, and eventually made it to the USC School of Cinematic Arts before dropping out to make movies full-time. His early films, such as Dark Star and Assault on Precinct 13, were praised for their effectiveness, especially with such a small budget. And then he launched the slasher genre with 1978's Halloween, which included The Thing from Another World on a television screen. From there, he moved on to more successful films like The Fog and Escape from New York. So back to The Thing. That's where we're at in his career. He didn't want to write it himself. He had just written Escape from New York, and he's like, nope, just going to direct this one. We're good.
I'm tired.
So they hired Bill Lancaster, who had written Bad News Bears. He was approached for the project as early as 1977, but he had no desire to remake The Thing from Another World. Other writers, some of those other pitches included insane changes to the source material. Somebody wanted to do it, like, underwater.
Okay. I mean, I get it, but that would be incredibly difficult to do even now.
In the 80s, like, oh my god. But, like, not even a shapeshifter, just like a sea monster. And they wanted to do, like, a fucking Moby Dick.
So do Moby Dick then. What the fuck?
Right?
Don't do The Thing.
I'm going to put that on the spinning circle of stories. But in between their first approaches, Carpenter and Lancaster, and their last approach to do this, both of them read the short story. Mm-hmm. And they both agreed they wanted to stick as close to the original as possible. So outside of some structural changes, like telling the story in flashback, the biggest change was to the ending. The ending of the novella, they defeat the thing, humans win, right?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
The original pitch that Lancaster made was that Childs and MacReady both are the Thing, and they leave Antarctica on a rescue helicopter. Carpenter was like, that's a bit too bleak. They need to sacrifice themselves to save humanity. And what ended up happening with the ending is Carpenter knew what he wanted to do, but he didn't know how to say it. And it was actually Kurt Russell who came up with the last lines of the movie, which are like, let's just sit here for a minute and then we'll see what happens, you know? Very, like, nonchalant and leaves it really open-ended.
Yeah.
That was Kurt Russell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well done, Kurt. Good choice. Solid choice. Haunting choice.
Right? And while he's worked with Carpenter multiple times in the past, Kurt Russell, and he even helped with this project early on, he was the last actor cast.
Really? Okay.
Yep. Notable members of the cast include Keith David, his first film role as Childs, Wilford Brimley as Blair. I'm not going to do my full normal cast thing, but I do have some alternates.
Okay.
All right. For MacReady, Christopher Walken.
Absolutely not.
Jeff Bridges.
Too charming, I think.
Nick Nolte.
Don't immediately put a face to Nick Nolte.
Fine by me. Sam Shepard.
I get it.
Chris Christopherson. Ed Harris.
Ooh, I could see Ed Harris.
And Tom Berenger. That's just a handful of the names. There were like 10 more that I didn't even recognize some of them. Childs. Carl Weathers. Rest in peace. Was this before or after Predator? When was Predator? Oh, this is before Predator by 5 years. Isaac Hayes, who had just done Escape from New York. And Ernie Hudson.
So they knew immediately they wanted Childs to be black.
Clearly. Is there any racial indication in the story?
There is not. The only like close thing I can get is that you get the vibe that MacReady is Scottish or Irish.
His name is MacReady.
He's also described as a man of bronze in like a little bit of homoerotic detail.
And knowing the author, I'm going to assume everyone was intended to be white. But if they don't specify, I'm going to imagine everyone's Latino next time I read it.
Yeah, I think you're meant to assume that everyone is white. Because it was, an Antarctic expedition in the 30s.
And the last alternate cast I have for Blair, instead of Wilford Brimley, Donald Pleasance.
Huh.
Halloween.
Yeah, I get it.
I feel... And this is coming from... So I watched the movie twice yesterday, the second time with the Kurt Russell and John Carpenter audio commentary, which is fucking amazing, by the way. Wilford Brimley was just down to do anything. He was just fucking down to do it. I don't think Donald Pleasance would have been as down, knowing some stories I've heard from the set of Halloween. Like, maybe he would have changed his mind, having seen how successful that film was, and Carpenter, and now there's a budget involved, but... Well, the reason I don't think he would have been down is because the film was shot in the late summer, early fall of 1981 on location in Alaska and British Columbia.
Ugh.
The exterior sets were built for the film in the summertime, so that when the snow landed on them, it stayed on them. So, of course, they couldn't heat those buildings in order to keep the snow on top. Some of the interiors, especially the effect shots, were all shot down the street at Universal on 105-degree days in Los Angeles. And they would go from 105-degree heat outside on their cigarette breaks and then inside to a 28-degree humidified set.
Ugh.
Yeah.
It's amazing none of them got pneumonia.
We'll get to that. The filmmakers originally intended to shoot this in black and white, but the studio was worried this would limit their ability to sell the film to TV networks, which is the only time the studio is right in this podcast. You'll hear about it. So instead, the lighting team used those like dark blue lights for the exteriors, which they found on airport runways.
Okay.
And then the contrast, because black and white is all about filming contrast with light and darkness, the contrast to that dark, like that really cool blue, flares. And that's why everything is lit with flares.
Yeah.
And those were real flares they were using, and they were really dripping and burning the actors the whole shoot.
Oof. I mean, flares are used a lot in the story as well.
Yeah.
They actually... Never mind, I can't talk about that yet.
Okay, so nearly every special effect was done practically, using matte paintings, reverse filming, false floors, and other techniques to achieve the legendary monster effects, which I'll talk more about in a minute. The destruction of the camp towards the end of the film, they actually blew up the set.
Of course they did.
And it wasn't the last day of shooting, because they redressed it, and that was the Norwegian camp.
Of course. Perfect. Well done.
And this set, The Thing, and they recognized this as they were making it. It was the first time in a very long time that a film featured no female actors. And in fact, the crew only had one female member.
Oh, that poor woman.
Who left early because she was pregnant. According to Kurt Russell, and this is from the commentary track, this led to a unique camaraderie on set because, quote, there was no posturing because there was no one to posture to.
So really, the answer to the crisis of feminism in filmmaking is just make sure there's no women.
So, when you get 30, 40 men together, basically camping up in the wilderness in Alaska.
Oh no.
For 8 weeks.
Who was the menace?
Everyone.
I was gonna say, and why was it Kurt Russell?
Everyone was a menace. First day of the shoot, Keith David shows up with a broken hand.
Keith.
It's swollen. They send him to the hospital. They pierce it. They wrap it. They put a black glove over it and paint it to look like his hand. So for the first half of the movie, he's hiding his left hand. And there's one shot, and on the commentary, Carpenter points it out before you even see it because he's that in tune with his fucking film. He runs up, and you can see his swollen-ass left hand, and he's hiding it behind Kurt Russell. So funny.
Pulling a Carrie Elwes.
There's a scene where Kurt Russell throws a stick of dynamite to set off some fire outside, and he almost blew himself up. And in the film, you could see him react very negatively to the explosion and how quickly the explosion happened. It's only for a second, but it's noticeable. They have, I can't remember the name for it. I didn't quite understand what Carpenter said, so I didn't write it down. But they are card-carrying members of something club in that area because they all drank Flaming Everclear at the bar one night. And at the time of the recording, 15 years after the film came out, Carpenter still carried it in his wallet.
That's very charming and sweet, actually.
All right, now, there are two menaces that rise above and beyond the rest on this set. And you were right. One of them was Kurt Russell, doing all that work with flares. After lunch one day, Carpenter got back to set, and the medical team is wrapping Kurt Russell's face. And Kurt looks at Carpenter and says, "I can't shoot today, boss. I burned myself." And Carpenter is looking at every single person there, waiting for someone to break, because he knows it's a joke, but no one's cracking. But Kurt Russell got it given to him, too. So in the film, he plays a helicopter pilot. The backstory that he added, I learned this from the commentary as well, was that he flew over Vietnam, and as a result, is an alcoholic in isolation. But he plays a helicopter pilot, and towards the beginning of the film, they get in a helicopter, and they fly off to check out the Norwegian camp, right? And you see him get in there, and he leans forward, and he says something at the camera, and you can see there's another guy next to him, also holding the controls, but you can't see his face, but he's dressed like a different character. That's the stunt pilot. And then the helicopter takes off, and it starts to fly away. And as it starts to fly away, it wobbles and gives a weird turn. And that's because the stunt pilot let go of the sticks while Kurt Russell was holding them. And Kurt was flying the chopper.
Suffer.
just without telling him, let's go. And they're rolling, and it's in the film.
That's wonderful.
We love some fucking shenanigans.
So, you brought this up, that there's no women involved. I will say that when he was originally trying to sell Who Goes There, he did get a note from an editor that he should try to add a female character, and that would make it sell better. He could not, although having read a little bit more about him, I have a feeling it would not find a way to include a female character. His explanation was there would be no women on a mission to the Antarctic in the 30s, which, you know, I would just say that having been in a play that is explicitly about female explorers in the 1880s, I think he was full of shit and just didn't want to write a woman into it. But the other major change that I realized I didn't mention before is that there are a lot more characters.
It's, I think, 37.
It starts with 37 men, 70 dogs, and 5 or 8 cows.
Yeah, that was explicitly trimmed down because that's too many. It's the Game of Thrones problem. It's why I can't watch Game of Thrones. It's too many white dudes. That would be too many white dudes.
I will say, you don't... there's a point where they've figured out that they've been infiltrated and they're trying to clear everything out, so they go to the dogs, and it's basically, they leave, chapter ends, people come back, and they're just stoic and cleaning things up, and they're like, what kind of tests did you do? Did you do more immunizing? Couldn't we do something with a different dog? And their response is just, there are no more dogs.
Whew.
And it's revealed that 69 of the dogs, except for the one that they had been using for their other test, were things, and so were the cows. And ultimately it ends up that 15 of the 37 men are creatures.
Film ends up a little bit differently in that we don't actually know. The special effects team on this film was led by a then 21-year-old Rob Bottin. Bottin, I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
I am not sure either, I just guessed.
Rob Bottin. He worked himself into double pneumonia with the help of an uncredited Stan Winston.
Perfect.
He worked every day for over a year and lived at the studio lot because he wanted to make sure he didn't want to leave any of the fun stuff for anyone else, basically. He had to have his hands in everything. And yeah, double pneumonia and exhaustion and...
Yeah, that sounds like a 21-year-old.
Yeah.
It sounds like a 21-year-old man.
They built puppets for nearly every monster effect, barring, like, a little bit of stop-motion animation used late in the film that's only in, like, a couple seconds.
I remember reading about specifically the puppet for the hands.
Yeah.
The chest compression
We'll talk about that. Some of these designs required up to 50 puppeteers to operate, many of which were under fake floors being dripped on by KY jelly and squib juice, and others operating fake legs from behind actually burning set walls.
Wild.
In order to achieve the chest-mouth scene, a double amputee was hired to wear fake arms that would be bitten off by the puppet.
Beautiful. I remember there was like a thing where they were talking about big effects in movies, and they talked about that.
That one is incredible.
Yeah.
Love that effect. With heavy use of fire on set as a plot device and a lighting technique, they almost lost a couple puppets because there were some fumes that caused a fireball at one point.
Oh, just casual fireball.
Just oopsie poopsie.
We didn't ask how big the room was. We said we cast fireball.
Yeah. So, I've talked a lot about this film. I think it's time that we actually sit down and watch the trailer.
I'm curious about this. Oh, before we watch the trailer, I have a quick question. What is your favorite puppet or favorite effect from this movie?
The fucking... right after the hand biting, right after the chest mouth, there's that one puppet with the long neck and the dude's fucked up face.
Oh.
That one? And then also, like, 2 minutes later when the head detaches from the chest mouth and scurries off, and then they set it on fire and it's in the hallway spinning in a circle.
And screaming like R2-D2?
And then it cuts to them continuing the blood test. Or starting the blood test.
Yes. I was gonna say the tongue spider puppet.
Yeah.
Tongue spider head puppet is my favorite. Because
Right.
it's so awful.
Now let's see which of our favorite puppets will appear in this trailer.
Men have just discovered something. For 100,000 years, it was buried in the snow and ice. Now it has found a place to live. Inside. Where no one can see it, or hear it, or feel it.
I know I'm human. Some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to, but it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won.
You guys gonna listen to Gary? He can beat one of those things!
"12 men on a mission."
I was gonna say, how are you gonna make this the alien protagonist story?
I mean, so I didn't put this in my notes. I'll talk about it now. There was a short story written in the last, 15 years from the alien's perspective. And it's like, I don't understand. Why can't they shapeshift? I'm just trying to find a way to live. Why are they being so mean to me?
That's very funny, actually.
Very funny. The timing of the thing's release was unfortunate. This is an era where horror films and action films started trending a bit more lighthearted. Like, we're getting close to Nightmare on Elm Street, shit like Commando, right? And this movie takes itself so fucking seriously. And that's not a criticism. Just at the time, moviegoers weren't trying to see that. It also came out 2 weeks after E.T. and the same day as Blade Runner.
Oof.
Some test audiences didn't like the ambiguous ending. And
Cowards.
Yeah. And others were unenthused by the film's black and white somber marketing. That's not quite what we saw in the trailer that we just watched. We saw a later one, but not the latest one. Because Carpenter actually made a late effort to change the title to Who Goes There. And the studio did change the tagline to The Ultimate in Alien Terror. From the much better tagline, which is what we had on that trailer. Man is the warmest place to hide.
Such a good tagline.
Written by the same guy who came up with In Space No One Can Hear You Scream. Same fucking guy.
Fun fact, I believe you're the one that told me this. Alien was also inspired by Who Goes There.
Yeah, that does not surprise me. And the fact that Alien's success was the inspiration to remake Who Goes There? It's interesting how cyclical this becomes.
Yeah, fun full circle.
Yeah, it keeps spinning. Their attempts to, push the marketing better weren't very successful. It made roughly $20 million on a $15 million budget, which isn't a failure, but it's not good.
Yeah,
either.
nobody's taken home a massive paycheck on that.
Yeah. Critically, the film failed at the time. Most reviews are negative based on the story and how it was told. Very bleak. They criticized the characters, their actions, their dialogue, and how the ambiguous ending. That said, the acting itself was praised, as were the technical achievements such as the cinematography and the special effect. But even the special effects were criticized for being too gross and weird and off-putting and going down the body horror rabbit hole a little too deep. Basically, the audiences, just like with the 51, were not ready for it at the time.
There's a quote from Mara Wilson in one of her books, or maybe it was a response to a fan. But the question that she gets a lot is basically, do you know when you're making a bad movie? And she's like, honestly, the on-set part is all that we recognize as actors. And if the on-set part is fun, we kind of don't care if the movie is good or bad.
You had a good day at work.
That said, I feel like it must be especially devastating when you're in something like The Thing where you've had a blast filming. It's a unique experience, and you see the movie and you're like, this is good. I like this. We have something good here. And then it's just...
Yeah. In the aftermath of the release, Carpenter lost the director's seat of the film Firestarter.
Oh, that would have been so good.
Yeah. And Universal bought him out of his multi-picture contract.
Cowards.
Imagine after The Thing, your first studio film is The Thing, and your studio is like, we don't need any more from you. Christ, Universal.
Cowards.
Which this is still hosted on the Universal-owned Peacock. They're still making money off this shit.
I hope the execs... I'm sure they didn't, because it would involve executives having, like, not smooth brains. And a sense of, like...
Oh, they only get dumber from here.
And a sense of, like, regret or recognition. But, like, considering eventually what happens with this movie, I hope that they, like, think of John Carpenter and are sad.
Yeah.
Like, you fumbled Halloween's director.
I mean, they got him back for the new trilogy. Not to direct, but as an EP. So Halloween 2018, Halloween Kills, and Halloween Ends. He is still involved in those. I think he might have just done the soundtrack and EP. So I don't know how much involvement he's had, but he's at least back in the Universal fold.
But also something that I'm shocked we haven't mentioned, the soundtrack.
I can't believe I didn't do a paragraph on the soundtrack. So this one wasn't 100% Carpenter. The soundtrack was Ennio Morricone.
Yes.
Who, if I'm not mistaken, was... Wah, wah, wah.
Yes.
And that's because for his first big budget film, Carpenter wanted to have that big orchestral sound. And Morricone was like, it's John Carpenter, I gotta learn some synth shit, don't I? So the actual soundtrack, like there's a released soundtrack disc that includes like an hour of Morricone's score that's not used in the film. There's smatterings of it, but some of the more memorable stuff is Carpenter. And he later described it not as doing more score, but mostly just doing sound effects using a synthesizer.
Yeah.
Like what we would come to recognize as like the bum, 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 ch, 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 like that kind of shit. Like in the same sense that that's a score.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I was not going to talk about that.
Yeah, just it's so much of the unsettling nature and like storytelling. It's like it is the room stank of this movie. It's just like you get in and the sound effects and the vibe of what you're seeing, immediately you know this is different. And
that's something that Carpenter nails with all of his scores and his musical choices. And there is something eerie when strings come in this film because it's a Carpenter film and it looks like a Carpenter film. And for the most part, it sounds like a Carpenter film. And then there's some strings and it almost makes it more unsettling.
Yeah.
Like something's here that doesn't belong. Morricone's the thing.
Yup.
You know? Is it Morricone or...
Yeah.
I'm not reading it, so I'm probably butchering that pronunciation. The film did eventually gain a cult following after its home video release and its TV edit, which included an alternate ending in which a Thing Dong...
Stop wiggling your eyebrows. He's been wiggling his eyebrows for the last, 37 seconds.
An alternate ending in which a Thing Dog escapes, and also voiceover narration. Must have been a thing in 82 with Blade Runner and all that shit, right?
Huh.
Carpenter, while he disowned the TV edit no doubt it influenced the film's revival in the zeitgeist and prolonged its legacy. And by the 90s, critics began to recognize the quality of the film, and they started singing its praises, and it's now widely considered to be one of the greatest horror films of all time. And it's influenced modern filmmakers like Edgar Wright, Quentin Tarantino. Like, apparently Hateful Eight is just the thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And they also, because we have to talk about it, they screen this every year to kick off winter at the research station in Antarctica.
That's how you know Antarctic scientists are just fucked.
Like, I was about to lose it when we got out of our massage on our cruise and Titanic was playing on the big screen on the cruise ship.
Another night!
But, like, all right, time to bunker down for winter in Antarctica. Let's watch The Thing.
One thing I do want to mention is that there's a line in the story where they basically catch the Blair alien in...
The Blailian? Oh, I hated that. That did not feel good.
Yeah, sit with your suffering. They catch him, they think about half an hour before he would have been gone, and they would have been fucked. And the way that MacReady or Benning, one of the two that's alive at the time, describes it is half an hour, and we would have come over here and realized that he was gone, and we would have spent the rest of our lives on Antarctica shooting at anything moving that came to us.
Yeah, because don't they, like, knock off a spring albatross or something?
They
because they're like, that bird might be a thing.
They're chasing it away so that the creature doesn't have the opportunity to get to it.
Yeah.
So, because the first time I read it, I also thought they were killing it, and I was like, that's rude, but no, they're just chasing it away.
A follow-up comic book was released in the 1990s, but no film sequel has yet come to pass. Frank Darabont of Shawshank Redemption fame was attached to a 4-part Sci-Fi Network miniseries that fell through. And Blumhouse has announced a sequel in 2020 that has yet to be released.
When in 2020? Because I'm thinking...
I don't know, but I saw updates as recently as 2023.
Okay, because I was going to say, if they announced it in, like, February, I can see them being like, just kidding.
Maybe not.
Maybe
we don't have the thing anymore.
It's like how one of the D&D campaigns started in early 2020, end of 2019, and the big villain was a plague cult, and the DM was like, hey guys, you still cool with that?
So, we still don't have that sequel from Blumhouse, but we do have a prequel. Following the success of Zack Snyder's 2004 Dawn of the Dead remake, producers began looking to other 80s properties to abuse, settling on The Thing. Respecting the original film, the producers opted to make a prequel telling the story of the destroyed Norwegian camp.
Which, you know what? Fair enough. I think that's a solid choice.
Respect. Mad respect. I actually respect this movie a lot, and I'll get into why as we go on. Starring Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Joel Edgerton, and directed by Matthias Van Heiningen Jr. I'm never going to say that one again. With a screenplay by Ronald Moore. Jr. was actually supposed to direct a follow-up to Dawn of the Dead first, that would have taken place in Las Vegas and involved a heist. And that film, Army of the Dead, was canceled. That Netflix film that came out in 2021. They did eventually get to it, but it was supposed to be this guy.
No, we promise. See? We did Army of the Dead. We promise we'll give you your sequel.
Yeah. He did not direct it. No, I think it was Snyder. The filmmakers of The Thing 2011 took great care to respect the original, and they utilized the original film, photos from the original production, things like that to recreate the Norwegian camp and find little story elements to work backward from. So like, oh, there's an axe in the door in that shot. We need to have a scene where an axe ends up in a door. The frozen corpse that MacReady finds with his wrist slit and the blood is frozen before he hits the ground, we're going to show that.
The radio op, right?
Yeah, the radio op. They also built and shot the film with fully practical effects, just like Carpenter.
Why do I feel like there's a butt coming?
Unfortunately, our friends, the studio, thought that the film looked, and I quote, too 1980s.
Good, it's supposed to be 1980.
And they pushed the release date from April to October so they could put CG graphics over the practical effects.
Ugh.
And at the time, the director and the crew recognized that they were in a weird period of time. And this is something we talked about before, that practical effects are starting to look outdated because new techniques haven't been...
But you're remaking, or you're doing a prequel to a movie from the 80s.
Exactly! Like, it's gonna sell better if it looks like that. But, like, they understood that, yes, this looks 80s because the techniques haven't changed in 20 years. Thanks, Jurassic Park. But CG isn't quite good enough to do what we want it to do and look real like we want it to look. And especially doing the CG in, like, 8 months. Less than that.
6?
6, 7 months? Without that being the original plan, so you don't have, like, lighting references for your graphics. It just sucks. And not only that, the studio changed the ending.
Of course they did.
So the way that this movie ends is Mary Elizabeth Winstead plays a paleontologist who's invited down to look at this creature that they took out of the ice. Actually very similar to how The Thing from Another World starts. And in the end, it's just her and her helicopter pilot, and they're fighting, you know, the two-faced thing monster that we see towards the beginning of The Thing 1982.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's like the first one they burned. We see how that monster came to form, and it's fucking hated that. That, like, in a body horror visceral kind of way. Yeah. Really good shit, actually. But they, like, fight this thing. They go to the ship, and on the ship they kill it as it's trying to escape, and then when they kill it, the engines die down. And there's this really weird pod in the middle that has what looks like Tetris pieces floating on it, and it's like a weird piece of CG that's supposed to look like future alien tech. And my sci-fi nerd ass looked at it and went, oh, that looks cool. I wonder what that is. Are they going to explain? No, they don't explain shit.
Of course not.
And then, you know, they go back and she realizes the other dude's a thing and she kills him and then she fucks off to the Russian base.
Well.
And then the dog and Lars come out and Lars' helicopter chases the dog to the American base.
Yeah.
Which opens up the doors for a sequel on the Russian base.
Well, you don't know if she goes to the Russian base.
Well, that's what Wikipedia says. That's
fair.
Because they mentioned it earlier in the film as well.
Yeah.
The original ending, the thing with the Tetris pieces, the theatrical ending is referred to as the Tetris ending. And the other ending is referred to as the pilot ending.
Okay.
Because it's not weird, random alien technology. It's a storage pod that's been cracked open.
Oh, no.
This isn't the Thing's ship. The Thing was a specimen that whoever ship this is brought on board. And the Thing escaped and got him. And the pilot, and that's why it's called the pilot ending, tried to crash land in the most barren landscape it could find to prevent the Thing from spreading.
That's fun.
How good is that?
So that is actually something that is vaguely brought up in Who Goes There. They wonder if what they saw was the creature's original form. And they decide generally that it probably was the creature's actual form because it didn't have anything. They're like, it could have been imitating the other creatures on that ship, but the way that it looks, it looked like it didn't look that way. Their vibe was that that was the creature's actual form, and it's described as kind of this like blue body that's like 4 feet tall. It has 3 red eyes and like blue stringy hair that looks and acts like earthworms. And it is very strongly implied by the taking of Conant that those are the tentacles that it uses to fuse with flesh.
Interesting. Carpenter had a completely different vision for it. His idea was that no one will ever know what this thing originally looked like or how it started. Every time it transforms, they purposely tried to make its various things as alien as possible to elicit that this thing has taken over so many different planets and there's so much inside it. Something that my beloved Animorphs touches on every time Visser 3 morphs and it's some crazy alien from a fucked up planet. And they're like, I don't even know what the fuck I'm looking at, but it's breathing fire and flying.
That's a thing from the novel as well, in that when it gets cornered and caught in the act of killing the dog handler and taking over the dogs, it turns into a partial creature that they like can't even fully describe except for the fact that it like has talons and claws and like is like razor sharp and has a carapace. And so they're like, when it got caught, it started transforming into the thing that it thought could fight the best, but it couldn't finish transforming.
It's an Andalite.
Oh my god, you're right. It's an Andalite.
We figured it out. Problem solved.
Not enough legs.
The other thing, this studio also, to pace the film better, quote, because they didn't like the slow boil of the tension. That's the fucking point. I know. We'll get to it. They actually cut character building scenes from this as well. And the whole point is getting to know these characters and watching them change.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's so many subtle things in Carpenter's, and these are things that like he brings up on the commentary as points he was trying to make. And it's like these guys have known each other for years, and they're starting to doubt each other. And they've never done this before. And you're watching, like, in Wilford Brimley's eyes, him looking at a friend and going, this isn't my friend anymore. Or am I just tired?
That's the thing, too. Not only are they, no pun intended, not only are they people that have known each other for years, they have known each other intimately. There is, repeatedly in the story, he talks about how there is no privacy in Antarctica. There are no locks in Antarctica.
They fuck all the time, I assume.
Okay, you have triggered my trap card. I firmly believe if at least one of these men had fucked another one of these men, the movie would not end the way it does in 82. I would know you if you were if it was you or if it was a creature. If you were possessed by something else, I would know it was not you. That is literally a plot device in The Prestige.
In The Prestige, spoilers, they are two different people.
But she knows that it's not him.
Because it's a different person. The Thing is a perfect imitation down to behavior and personality.
I would know if it was not you. If either of these men had explored, if any of these men had explored each other's bodies, the movie would not happen the way it does.
Honey, you're not acting as autistic as you normally are. Are you a thing?
Listen, we would get it right out there. It would be perfect.
Just like the previous two films, poor critical and commercial response, and a planned sequel following Winstead's character to the next location was canceled.
I get it, because the best part about The Thing is the ambiguity. You want the person or people sitting alone wondering, what the fuck do I do now? Who is gonna believe me?
Did I not pull that quote earlier? Because the ambiguity was like negatively received in focus groups.
That's
like
because people are cowards.
Because people are stupid. Because coming out of the movie, somebody asked Carpenter during a pre-screening, well, was he a thing or wasn't he? And Carpenter's like, I don't know. The point is that you don't know. Ew, I don't like that.
Cowards.
I mean, you didn't see it at the time, but that was the internet in 2010 after Inception was just like, is he awake or is he dreaming? And the point isn't, is he awake or is he dreaming? The point is, he doesn't care.
The point is, they're all fucking dead.
It doesn't matter to him anymore.
Exactly.
Whatever reality this is his now. Similarly, in The Thing, the 82 ends with two people staring at each other. Neither of them is sure if the other one is still human.
But either way, it doesn't matter.
And if they are human, we're not surviving the next couple of hours. So let's wait and see what happens. Like, maybe as soon as the credits roll, they blow each other up, shoot each other. They both realize they're both the Thing, and then they, like, dance and then dig themselves a nice little bed and wake up in a couple years when somebody comes down to visit, you know? But the point is that those characters don't know. And that's where the horror is.
That's why I like the concept that The Thing 2011 goes with. Because you know because you've seen the original, or if you're going into it having seen the original, you know no one is getting out of this alive. The journey is, how do they get there? How does it get to that point?
How close do they get?
Exactly.
Like,
it's why Rogue One is my favorite Star Wars movie. Nobody is surviving. How do you make people care about these characters so that at the end you're like, oh shit, they die?
I'm not even joking. At watching that movie, there's a scene where they make it look like Lars might be got. Mm-hmm. And then the end of the movie is, oh, he's actually alive the whole time, and he's the gunner on the helicopter at the beginning. And I watched this one before I watched the 82 for this rewatch, and was like excited to see him. And I was like, oh no, Lars is doomed. And then when the thing started, I'm like, no, Lars, no, you're gonna get shot. Don't do it. Like, I know what's gonna happen to this character by, over the course of the film, like, fell in love with the guy.
Yeah. And that's why it's like, balls to the movie for making that choice, and fuck you, studio, for being like, just kidding.
You see why I respect it, right?
Yeah.
Like, they tried to do it right.
Yeah.
And what they made before the studio cut it to shreds was probably really good. Or at least better than what we got.
More producers need to receive swords with cryptic messages on them.
Yes. Y'all can Google that if you don't know that one. And that was the last the thing we've had was the 2011 prequel. However, in 2018, a biographer by the name of Alec Navala Lee, whose book you have read parts of,
Yes.
discovered evidence that a longer version of Who Goes There may exist in the archives at Harvard University. What he discovered was a full early draft of the story called Frozen Hell, which was a fuller-length novel and featured an extended opening and other more minor changes to the story. And after a wildly successful Kickstarter campaign, the novel was released as Frozen Hell, the book that inspired the thing, in 2019. Cody, I believe you also read Frozen Hell.
I did indeed. I actually read Frozen Hell first.
Why?
Because it was at the library faster.
Okay. So what are the big differences? Because I didn't find any actual details on that.
So Frozen Hell is the original draft of what would become Who Goes There, or Pandora. He actually, John Campbell actually recycled the name Who Goes There, Frozen Hell, multiple times. Because there were a bunch of different stories that those were titled, and it was just given a different title later. But Frozen Hell is about 40 pages longer. And it is primarily in the first 3 chapters that were cut. It is the discovery of the alien spaceship and the subsequent destruction of the alien spaceship by the scientists to increase the intensity that the biologist has for keeping the creature and not letting them destroy it, because it's the last one ever. But basically, the scientists discover the ship, and in trying to melt the ice that has surrounded it so they can get inside, they use a magnesium bomb, not realizing that the ship itself is magnesium. So they essentially create a massive magnesium bomb, and the only reason they survive is because science.
So this is just in the Frozen Hell version, right?
Correct.
The same thing happens in the 51 film. They find it, and they're like, all right, we're going to melt the ice with thermite, which is Army regulations. And then, oops, we blew up the ship.
Yes. Yeah, that's why I thought it was very interesting that they do that, because it's the same. It is. I mean, obviously, he would have known at the time, but I don't believe that Campbell was involved in.
I didn't see anything one way or the other.
Yeah.
He did. I did read a quote from him that I don't remember the quote, from when the movie came out. And the way he spoke about it, it didn't seem like he was involved at all.
The other thing that is made explicit in Frozen Hell and is only implied in Who Goes There is the fact that the alien is telepathic, and it is essentially projecting its thoughts to everyone around it initially. And so anyone who sleeps near it or is near it for long enough starts having horrible nightmares about their friends' faces being twisted and melted and turned into something else and then reforming. It's kind of what drives the biologist crazy, because he realizes its powers because he's been spending all of that time alone with it.
And that's the character that is Blair.
Yes,
Yeah.
That is Blair. The one who is eventually locked, the one who is the penultimate struggle and creates the atomic energy.
The most interesting character in the movie, because he recognizes if this thing leaves, humanity is doomed. This thing's not leaving. Sorry, the rest of us.
Essentially, once you get past the first chunk, it's identical story. Like, he reworked, obviously, the beginning of the story to start at the point where everyone is voting on what they do with the creature. Because Blair is like, it's completely safe. It's not going to reanimate. It's been dead forever. And then, of course, it reanimates. Because the way that he phrases it is that low forms of life can sometimes come back to life from deep freeze. And he specifically mentions viruses and bacteria.
I think that line is in the 51 as well.
Yeah. And so because each piece is a part of the whole, when they bring it back to life, essentially it reanimates because it's a higher form of life, to use their technology. There's a section where he talks about how Blair is a biologist, and he talks about, do you guys know, after Blair has basically gone crazy and they've, like, tied him up and sedated him so that they can figure out what their next steps are, the doctor is like, are you guys familiar with the story of how you deal with hoof and mouth disease in cattle? And, of course, the rest of the scientists are like, no, what's the story? And Dr. Copper goes into the story of how if there is no hoof and mouth disease, there can be no hoof and mouth disease. You kill every animal that is diseased or that could have come in contact with it. When Blair wakes up, he is going to want to kill all of us. There is no way that we can convince him that the creature is dead and that we are not the creature.
Yeah.
And so that anecdote is in both stories, which makes it abundantly clear that that is exactly what Blair's plan is, and that's where their idea of essentially burning it with fire comes from.
All right, so there are many differences between the 4.5 tellings of this story.
Yes.
But the major similarity is paranoia. And this is where we're going to talk about some themes, as we are wont to do. Now, what the characters are paranoid of is what makes this story enduring. In each era, there are different cultural, political, and economic factors that the story feeds off of and echoes in that era's retelling. So from what I watched, the 51 post-war film highlights concerns about Russian aircraft. They say an airplane went down. Is it a Russian one? You know, there's distrust of nuclear and other distrust of nuclear and other science in the wake of Hiroshima, and also the American expansion into Alaska and the Great White North. I think Alaska had either just become a state or was about to become a state.
It's something that's fascinating in the original. I say original. They were both written before 38. They're both written before atomic energy, before the atomic bomb. That's the big scientific discovery at the end. And that was actually a through line in Campbell's work, was that it was about a genius who uses his magic intelligence to create atomic energy and then creates a spaceship and goes off and saves an alien world. And that was a through line in all of his kind of pulpy science fiction stories. But in Who Goes There and Frozen Hell, the alien has atomic technology, and that's how he's using to heat the place that he lives. It's how he's creating his anti-gravity. And it's just fascinating how in 38, when it was published, that was like a far off technology that it was just like incredibly magical. It was literally the stuff of science fiction. Mm-hmm. And in 7 years, it would no longer be science fiction. And in, 12, 13 years, it was going to be a thing that we were afraid of.
Like 13 years later, when it's first adapted, like in society at the time, like all these all these bee monster movies where radiation leaked into the rabbit plant. Now the rabbits are huge. And this is a similar vibe of like, there's this alien and he's made of plants. And what are we gonna do? It was the style at the time. The 1982 film was released during an economic recession, which is part of why the audiences rejected it at the time. It was very bleak. In addition, Cold War tensions continued to be high. There's even a joke about maybe we're at war with Norway. And also the looming AIDS crisis, which at the time required a blood test. And it was an eerie yet unintended mirroring of reality on screen.
Which is another fascinating element because this is all men. Almost everyone involved in this was male.
Yeah, it's fascinating to think about. That was not his intent at all, but it works. Because that was what was going on, especially in the gay community at the time, was if I go home with this guy, am I going to get AIDS?
Yeah.
Because he doesn't even know if he has it.
Yeah.
The only way to tell is a blood test. And this is where I think the 2011 starts to slip. Because it doesn't really have that same, overarching paranoia throughout the characters. It's more of just an action movie with some body horror elements.
The thing that I think they missed and would have been fascinating to explore is the fact that are there any other women, or is it just Mary Elizabeth Winstead?
There's one other woman at the camp.
Okay.
And the two women start to think that the one guy is the thing. So the other lady's like, we can't let them leave. I know where the keys to the snowcats are. Let's go get them. And then they cut to they're in like a storeroom and Winstead's digging through the drawer. She got 2 keys. And then the lady's like, there should be 5 there, as her chest starts to open up. Because she's the thing. And she knew that Winstead was onto her.
Because I'm thinking like, you could 100% do, I am the only woman here. There are worse monsters than just this alien. Like, that is always a possibility. Like, you could especially in 2011.
Yeah.
Like, you could definitely take that as the overarching paranoia. It's not quite as generalized as like being afraid of Russia, but you could absolutely instill that, especially if she's the POV character.
Yeah, come to think of it, like I watch it through my own perspective because I don't have any other choice. I'd be interested to watch it through that perspective with you sometimes, because
just because I'm thinking like she's already afraid, like if you start that layer with she's already not 100% comfortable with all of the men around her, and all of a sudden some of them might be literally trying like to absorb her, it would be a little close to Alien, because like Alien is literally what if men got pregnant, what if men got raped and impregnated.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like you could play with that idea, and it feels
there might
like
be some elements there. It could also just be something I missed in my viewing. The thing is, at the time it came out, though, there were other cultural patterns going on with film, cashing in on nostalgia. So the film's original ending and special effects showed a nostalgic love for the source material, while also expanding on the story, asking new questions with the pilot ending. Of course, the studio had a studio all over it, and what audiences received was a typical money grab fueled by nostalgia, which was the style at the time.
Can you imagine if we would have gotten if the Thing 2011 got the space to breathe that all 8,000 of the Alien prequels have gotten?
Right? Christ, I forgot those were starting to come out too.
Mm-hmm. I think Prometheus came out that year.
It's like 2011 or 2012, yeah. But regardless of if the filmmakers were pro-science, like Campbell seemed to be, anti-science, like Hawks, or Carpenter, pro-human.
Which... The other thing that's interesting about the 50 is, I wonder why we would be upset with scientists in the 50s.
Here's what I found.
Thank you, Siri. Regardless, anti-science, pro-science, pro-human, everyone strived to entertain and terrify the audiences of their era, and mostly succeeded to the future audiences. Like, the first two were definitely ahead of their time. 2011, it's been about 13 years, and it hasn't quite gotten the resurgence. I think... if the director's cut were to come out, maybe there's something there, because I think there'd be fans. I'd see it.
I feel like at the very least it deserves a critical revision the way the director intended it. Like, give it a shot.
Because there's
something there, clearly.
There's love there for the original. I say the original. There's love there for the 82.
Yeah.
And Carpenter absolutely had love for Hawks and love for the story. And now with Frozen Hell being out, like... why not give it another shot? Go back, restore the old effects, restore some of those old character building scenes, and re-release it on like a 4K Blu-ray with the original, and you get both versions.
If we can get a 4.5-hour Justice League, let us get this.
Yeah, they tried. It was # release the pilot cut. They tried. It didn't stick. So, do you recommend Who Goes There or Frozen Hell?
I recommend Who Goes There over Frozen Hell. The chunk of Frozen Hell that got removed is pretty signature for Campbell, but it is relatively dense with scientific terminology. And it's very clear, like, here, I'm giving you this information so you have it, so you need it when you need it for later. But it's a lot of, like, basic scientific information, like... when we're at the magnetic pole, of course, everything's going to point down. But then we discovered that there was a second thing that was also pulling us down. Or pulling us in a different direction. And that's how we discovered the ship. But you're explaining this to a meteorologist. So, like, he knows this.
Yeah, but the audience in the 30s probably didn't.
Exactly. But you also don't need that. And honestly, I think the tighter and more compact nature of Who Goes There... the version that I read was about 75 pages, and the book is a little bit...
You said it was about 40 pages, so like 115?
Yeah, so I was going to say Frozen Hell was like 119, I think, but I was also reading it on my phone because it's only digital. They didn't do a full...
They did, but I believe it was a Kickstarter reward.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, yeah, I was only able to get it as a digital download. There is also included in that Frozen Hell, there is a... chunk of a sequel written by someone else. I did not read that because as soon as I found out it was not written by the same guy, I was like, fuck it, I'm not interested.
Yeah, not worth it.
But if you're going to read either of them, I do recommend Who Goes There. There's nothing super... like, despite the fact that the guy himself held abhorrent views, the text itself does not contain any of that. The cook, if you can read anyone, the cook character seems like he might be able to be read as black.
He was black in the 82, and he was Chinese in the 51.
And so there's a little bit of, like, you could maybe read some prejudice into that type of character, because he is the only one that's killed by another person. And he is also the least intelligent of everyone on the trip. So again, you could read some prejudice into that. It has, I mean, I read the chunk at the beginning. His writing is very tight. The horror scenes are really fun to read. And as everything kind of descends into this paranoia where these men hate one another or fear one another, it's very interesting. The ending does kind of feel like oh shit, I gotta make sure that the humans survive. And I definitely don't think if they weren't ready for it in the 50s, they weren't ready for it in the 30s. Nope. But I think it would have been bolder to have everyone die. Or at least whatever. That said, I enjoyed it. I read 2 versions of it. They're not super difficult to find. You can find them in various collections.
At your local library.
Yes.
Support your local library.
I haven't completed the reading, but Astounding, John W. Campbell, Isaac Asimov, Robert Heinlein, L. Ron Hubbard, and the Golden Age of Science Fiction by Alec Navala Lee. Very well researched. A lot of good information in there. So I'm going to hesitantly recommend it because I've only read about 100 pages of it. So what about you? Which of the various adaptations do you recommend?
None of them. All right. I'm going to review them in the order I watched them for this. And I watched them in chronological to when they take place, which means
canon chronology.
51, 11, 82.
Yes.
The Thing from Another World it's a relic of another time. You know, when teens would drive to the drive-in and fog up their windows during a bee monster movie. The monster is a guy in a suit made of plants. There's a fast-talking newspaper man cracking jokes. There's a romance between the secretary and an army man. It's fine. It's not groundbreaking. I can understand growing up in the, 60s, 70s, catching it on TV, like falling in love with it. I can get why it's a cult picture, but not for my generation. I've seen too much. Cronenberg exists. The Thing 2011 is very interesting. Knowing the studio manipulation that spoiled what could have been, behind the rough CG, there's a lot of love for the 82 film. And even though it's a group of people in the same setting experiencing the same problem as Carpenter's film, the characters are different enough and they make different enough choices leading to that known outcome that it's still engaging to watch, for the most part. The unsuccessful petition to release the pilot cut was warranted. There's a very good movie here that was spoiled by men in suits who wanted to buy another yacht. Which leads me to The Thing 1982. Sucks, hated it, never want to watch it again. Oh, wait. Nope, hold on, that's a different thing. Thing 1982 is a stone cold masterpiece. There's not much I can say about it that hasn't been said. It's endlessly rewatchable with an ambiguous ending that's still being talked about and argued over today. The practical effects hold up incredibly well because they are real things shot on a real set.
They're also disgusting.
Also, the performances from the actors. Kurt Russell's a fucking dream. Wilford Brimley, apparently in his most terrifying moment, Carpenter asked him, like, what were you thinking about in that scene? He's like, I gotta go pick up my laundry. But for real, it is one of the best films of the genre. It's near perfect.
I would say it's one of my top 5 movies.
Yeah. Which leads me to a question. Time to have that argument. What do you think? At the end of The Thing, 1982. Who is and is not a thing?
I think there are arguments to be made for either, because we do lose track of them.
Ever so briefly, we do lose track of MacReady in the climax.
We do lose track of both of them at different points in the film. However, I am a sucker for a tragedy, and my personal view is that neither of them are. They are both just going to die. Because they don't know.
Yes, I listened to director's commentary. The director doesn't know either. I used to subscribe to the theory that both are not the thing, because basically for the same reason you do. It's more tragic that way, and it's bleaker that way. And that's what makes that movie sing, is how bleak it is.
The thing is, I think it's less bleak if they're both human. It's almost
you're right.
It's almost more hopeful.
It's bleak for them, but with that tinge of hope is...
Yes.
You're right. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
This past week, watching all of them, I have reached the same conclusion with evidence. 2 things. 1, in the 2011, she she figures out that Carter is a thing because his earring is on his left ear, and she mentions it, and he instinctively reaches for his right ear, and that's the tell. And they establish very clearly and implicitly that the thing cannot replicate inorganic materials, such as metal.
Pulled from the source material, because the reason that they're able to systematically get rid of all of the dogs and cows is because in order to imitate, they had to be leashed or haltered. They cannot escape those.
Now, in 1982's The Thing, Childs, moments after the hot wire touches his blood and he's not, his earring is in his right ear. And in the final shot of the film, his earring is in his right ear. Has not moved. And the other thing, less evidence and more of a headcanon, alcohol. I don't think the Thing can drink alcohol. Alcohol turns up 3 times in this film in very clear moments. I'm sure it's in the background and other shit. And I didn't look for this in the 2011 because it didn't occur to me until I watched the 82 again. Opening scene, before anyone is a Thing, because we know the Thing hasn't arrived at camp yet, MacReady is drinking scotch. He's drinking that J&B, and then he pours it in the chess computer because it cheats. Second time we see it, MacReady, who we're still led to believe, and we find out later, is still a human at this point, drinks some Smirnoff from a bottle, puts the bottle in front of Blair, and then leaves as he locks Blair up in the cabin. Blair later turns out to be a Thing. He doesn't drink from that bottle. And then at the end of the film, that bottle of J&B comes back out. MacReady takes a swig, hands it to Childs, and Childs takes a swig.
Could it also be as simple as the Thing can't eat either?
No, it eats people.
I mean...
Well, it absorbs people.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe it's something like that. Maybe it's total poison to the Thing and it can't drink it at all. It would have been interesting if... I would say that the filmmakers of the 2011 made the decision whether or not Childs was a Thing with the earring thing.
Yeah.
That felt very intentional in a go back and rewatch and look for the earring thing.
Or like it references, because that's a common argument. The earring is like he still has the earring in 82.
Yeah.
They could also just have been referencing that as well. But either way, that still feels like the filmmakers made a decision.
Yeah. And the other thing is the lighting guy whose name is escaping me would light eyes differently if someone was and wasn't a Thing.
Like Blade Runner?
Like in Blade Runner. And MacReady's eyes are brighter than Childs' is in the last scene. And also you see less of Childs' breath. I can't remember if they said they shot that on an interior set or not. But throughout the commentary, Russell was saying that he was working extra hard to make sure his breath was visible, including like taking puffs from cigarettes before walking on set so that his breath was more visible, especially when they were working in the interior studios. And I wonder if that's straight up just something that he was working on and Keith David didn't have the same attention to detail, it being his first film and all. That,
and also, even 40 years later, we still have difficulties with lighting black people correctly.
True. That's very true. And especially then when there were, and I learned this in acting school of all places, theater school, different film companies. I believe Fujifilm films black skin better than Kodak film, if I'm not mistaken. And that is a known thing in the industry, especially with black filmmakers. And I learned that from a black filmmaker.
Wild.
Yeah, it's not really an issue now with digital cameras.
Yeah.
And the ability to just like adjust color saturation and all that like on the fly. But yeah, back in the day when you're shooting on negative, like that made a difference. And I guess one final question. Does a Thing know they're a Thing?
According to the source material, not necessarily.
Interesting.
Because in order to be an acceptable imitation, you have to completely imitate to the point that your own thoughts, the thoughts of the thing you have consumed, have become the creature. Because that's actually something they bring up when they tell the cook, or when the cook suspects that he might be a thing, he's praying for hours to the point that it's driving everyone else insane. And all of a sudden, he goes silent, they go in, he's been stabbed in the neck because one of the people couldn't take it anymore. And they leave, they come back, and he started transforming. And so they're like, he was praying to a god he didn't understand existed before it consumed him. That is how complete this imitation is.
You know what? The fucking chest mouth, he has a heart attack and dies. You're right. Because they were saying they were talking for months, Russell and Carpenter. They couldn't decide if an assimilated person knew they were a thing or not.
I think that makes it worse and scarier because you might know when it's happening, but you don't know.
Yeah.
By the end of it, you won't know. And isn't that worse?
Yeah.
That's also kind of what happens with Conant. Like, that's one of the worst scenes, is the thing is just thawing out, and he has to stay up with it because they want to make sure someone is there watching it to make sure that it doesn't, like, fall over or whatever. And he's sitting in the room alone, and he checks on it, and he talks about how he notices that the eyes aren't sightless anymore. And he notices that the tentacle things around the neck start moving a little bit. But all of a sudden it stops bothering him. And he walks back over to his seat and sits down. And the last line of that section is, the floorboards creaked. The floorboards creaked again, nearer. And it is very strongly, and he's convinced that he is human the whole time. He's the one they designed the serum test for. Mm-hmm. And then they pass it, and then the guy tests it again, and he realizes, fuck, two of us were giving blood to the dog to create this serum test. One of us is a monster because it's reacting to our blood too.
Yep.
So it shows that no one knows. Like, maybe in some microscopic atomic level, the creature knows, but it doesn't. And that's also why the stabby test works. Yeah. Because each part is its own distinct individual thing. Yeah. So it has the same it has the same fight to live, whether it's attached to you or not.
And it's why, like, it feels like the thing, especially in the 82, only attacks once it's threatened. Like, when they're doing the blood test, is it Windows?
Yeah, I believe so.
Is the one that is when he's convinced it's Gary.
Yeah.
And, like, as soon as the blood reacts and everyone turns and looks at him, that his eyes get big, and then he starts shaking and, like, face melting and shit.
And it's the rest of the people tied to the couch and like, get me off this fucking couch!
Oh my god. I love that scene so much.
Yeah.
I do not want to spend this entire winter tied to a fucking couch! There's some banger lines.
Oh. Yes.
Oh, highly recommend watching it with that commentary. When you see the dog thing for the first time, Carpenter, he's like, let's crack one open, and then the face cracks open. Like, he's making jokes in his own movie. It's so funny. I could talk about this for another hour and 42 minutes, but
a weirdly specific time.
We have bed to be going to. So, before we say goodnight, you can find us on our social media accounts in the link tree in the description below on this podcast. There you can also find our email address. If you want to send us comments, corrections, suggestions for future episodes, you could do that there. We have our Ko-Fi account there if you want to slip us a couple bucks, because podcast hosting ain't free. You can also check out our other podcast, The Treatment, a podcast about stories that we do with Mark Lucas. Our most recent episode is our retelling of The Tortoise and the Hare as a buddy cop crime mystery comedy.
Yes, sure.
Very, very fun road we took on that one. Give that a listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Yes.
But until next time, I am Billy Beck.
I am Cody Beck.
And this has been Soon to Be a Major Motion Podcast.
Are we gonna leave them in suspense as to what we're gonna cover next time?
Fuck. I never end these right. Next time we're doing Hellraiser. Clive Barker's Hellraiser.
Which is hilarious because both Frankenstein and fucking Dracula are mentioned in Astounding.
Of course they are.
As speculative fiction.
But yeah, Clive Barker's Hellraiser, which I think is the first thing we've covered where it was written, screenplayed, and directed by the same person. So this is going to be...
Barker.
I gotta watch Hellraiser again. I don't mind it, but it's...
That's...
For someone who doesn't like body horror, I really picked a couple body horrors for this October, huh?
Yeah, but the body... I like body horror. I do not like Hellraiser.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. I'm just going to honestly fade the music in there because I already finished the podcast.
Yep.